What's up, everyone? Tara Roberts here with Bleacher Report. I hope that week 9 treated you well. We had some big performances, some nice comeback performances. We had Brock Bowers finally return and give us an ungodly performance. I guess he made up for his entire 3 weeks out in literally just one game. So that was cool. On that topic, we are talking trade or hold. Are we keeping these fantasy players who had very strong week 9 performances? Are we selling? Or are we holding here? Now, last week we talked about some buys here. So we're kind of like, flipping it up a little bit and trying to figure out off of these performances, what are we going to do? Let's start off right here at the bat because we got a nice big list to start with. We're going to start with my first candidate here. It is Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle, we are holding on Rico Dowdle here. And the reason is because, well, he's Rico Dowdle. But in this game, he had 25 carries, 130 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 receptions on 3 targets for 11 yards. Chuba Hubbard, on the other hand, just 5 carries, 7 yards, 0 receptions on 1 target. We are holding because this man is clearly the Panthers' RB1, and I do not think they're going back after this performance here. The Panthers announced prior to the game that Rico Dowdle would be the starter. And based off the results here, again, I genuinely don't think there's going to be a reverse course of here because this was not a flipping of a committee because, once Chuba Hubbard returned, they had been splitting carries there. It was a shared workload. They were giving a little bit of priority to Chuba Hubbard. So in theory, what they could have done is say, okay, we're going to still keep it a committee, but we're going to show a little bit of preference there to Rico Dowdle. No, this was a full reversal. One player significantly downgraded and Rico Dowdle significantly up. Out of 58 total offensive snaps for the Panthers, Rico Dowdle played 42, while Chuba Hubbard played just 13. Dowdle also ran more routes. He got some more targets. It doesn't appear to be that there is any preference for Hubbard in terms of receiving work or third down work there. So while Dowdle had outperformed Chuba Hubbard in games that they'd split, clearly outperforming him. We had also seen him in those matchups against Miami and Dallas. Those were very easy matchups. He absolutely crushed that. But this week was key here. This week was key because we saw him have a very strong game against a pretty decent Green Bay defense. So I do think they have their ups and their downs here. But this is a defense that is a lot different than what we saw with Miami and Dallas, where literally everybody blows up those defenses. This one right here, Rico putting on this level of performance, this pretty much sealed the deal here. He is averaging 5.6 yards per carry. He is dominating in NFL next-gen stats in both efficiency and rush yards over expected. There is no reason for us to trade him at this point because we have no fear of him losing his job. At this point, you've got yourself a nice little league-winning upside running back here. Hold on to it. Don't let it go here unless if you get offered the most sweetheart deal in the world, Jamar Chase and literally Justin Jefferson and hey, if you get something crazy, all right. But for the most part here, we are holding on Rico Dowdle because this upside is absolutely insane. He is thriving there. And Carolina is remaining a fairly run-heavy team here. Keeping pass volume relatively low for Bryce Young. They don't want him to have to go out there and push aggressive volume to win a game. They want to keep it balanced and on the ground here. Now, moving on to our next candidate here, we have Ashton Jeanty. Are we selling? Are we holding here? You might be surprised at what I'm going to say, but we're going to trade him, unfortunately, here. With Ashton Jeanty, and hear me out here. This was a decent performance, right? I'm not knocking the performance by any means. 13 carries, 42 yards, 5 receptions. That was wonderful. A touchdown there. And apparently, as I, alluded to at the beginning of the show, all the Raiders' offensive problems were just apparently the lack of Brock Bowers in their life. And he literally, they didn't win the game. He literally brought the offense back here. This was arguably the best performance that we've seen from Geno Smith. And while success for Jeanty didn't come significantly on the ground there. It's very excusable. It wasn't perfect, but it's very understandable because the Jags defense, their run defense has been very stout against the run. And when I say stout, I might be kind of underselling it here. 42 yards is very good because no running back has exceeded 57 yards on the Jags, and they have faced some decent backfields there. So in Jeanty's defense, this was an overall excellent performance, and we finally saw him utilized in a really strong passing upside capacity as well here. So when we're looking at this, the reason that we are selling Jeanty is because there's good and bad here. The good is that if you drafted Jeanty, you drafted him to be your RB1, and that is exactly what he is. He is the undisputed RB1 on their team. There is no threat to his workload, but here's the bad here and why we are selling here. Unfortunately, the Raiders have one of the worst strength of schedules outlook for the entire league. They face Denver. Then they have a nice layup against Dallas, so that's awesome. Then they get Cleveland, the Chargers, Denver again, Philadelphia, who is apparently retooling and trading to just reinforce the defense at a crazy capacity for their Super Bowl run. Houston, we've seen their defense extremely stout as well. And then the Giants in week 12 goes back, or week 17, they go back and forth in terms of their defensive capacity, depending on how the superstars are performing in that matchup there. But overall, this is an absolutely dreadful strength of schedule there, particularly for Geno Smith. While some of those are attackable on the ground there, the problem is that they're just going to be in terrible matchups. We're going to have to be relying on that pass volume here and hoping to get those massive rush yard performances from Jeanty. It's not going to be good here. But again, because he is the clear RB1, selling him is fairly easy at this point because people are desperate. We're talking about somebody who obviously has a fantastic situation in terms of being the clear lead back here. So when we're looking across the league and people are trying to piecemeal together, if you've got the ability to sell Ashton Jeanty, there are lots of people who are willing to pay up because they're desperate. So this is not a situation where you have to sell him off for pennies. He is still garnering, from what I can see, some pretty high capacity there. From chat saying selling Jeanty after he gets Brock back and Chip Kelly decides to involve him in the pass game is diabolical. Yeah, but it's a sell high. And that's the same thing that it is always with these guys. All of these, hey, everyone on this list is going to have had a good game. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to parse it together and try and figure out when to sell someone, depending on what the right situation is. And again, when we're looking at that, he just doesn't have a fantastic path forward. So it was really good that he got involved in the pass game, but you can really capitalize on him right now to upgrade significantly at another position if you need to. Moving on to our next, we're going to do two here. It is Chase Brown and T. Higgins. Jeanty, sorry, I saw a comment there. Chase Brown here. We are going to hold on Chase Brown here with 11 carries, 37 yards, 8 receptions, and 14 targets, 75 yards here. Not an awesome performance on the ground, but Jesus Christ, 14 targets is absolutely insane here. The Bengals are on a bye, but you do need to try and hold him through it because this is literally the exact opposite of what we were talking about with Jeanty. So while you might think, why are we selling away Ashton Jeanty when we know he has a certain level of volume and carries, and we're going to hold on to Chase Brown, strength of schedule overall. After the bye week here, the Bengals have arguably the best strength of schedule rest of season here. It is a dream playoff schedule here. They face Pittsburgh, New England, Baltimore, Buffalo, Baltimore again, Miami, Arizona in week 17. Baltimore is retooling their defense and getting a little bit healthier there, but quite frankly, you go back to last season as well. There are definitely massive chinks in the armor there. So overall, we would still expect them to be a very solid matchup here. So we're talking about a playoff schedule that includes Baltimore, Miami, who is literally selling off pieces as we speak. We could literally get more trade notifications coming in of another defensive player being sold off of there, and Arizona, who has struggled overall there. Again, this is just a really good situation of where we are going to continue to see them putting up points. And to that matter, we can also talk about T. Higgins because in tandem there, we were also holding on to T. Higgins. Again, playoff schedule, strength of schedule as a whole, rest of season strength of schedule. This is really one of the easiest layup matchups. There's only literally like one bad matchup in here. Joe Flacco obviously was dealing with an injury, played through it beautifully, put up the most ridiculous amount of points ever. He'll have the bye week to heal up here. And when we're looking at the Bengals defense, the struggling is underselling it on another level. I mean, even assuming that Trey Hendrickson is not traded, they still need to put up points aggressively here. The Bengals defense is performing at a level that is so bad I think they have surpassed Dallas in being the ultimate layup matchup here. And it's not getting any better. This has been a consistent issue here, unfortunately. So while I get the appeal of selling high on these two players in particular, you have to take account in the fact that they're going to be in the same situation all season long. Flacco is going to have to put up 300 plus yards every single game because unfortunately the defense is going to be allowing teams to score 30 to 40 points on them easily, and they got to chase those points and counteract. It's the story, a tale as old as time, unfortunately there. But again, some of that, when we're looking at the production recently for these guys, you might be thinking like, hey, it's just coming against easier matchups, but that's not an issue here. When we're looking at T. Higgins, his production when he has been healthy, and cross our fingers that he stays healthy there, has been fantastic. He is a true wide receiver one in any other situation. Now, I do expect his production to be a little bit more volatile. Obviously, we're going to see more volume pushed to Ja'Marr Chase. It's not going to be consistently the T. Higgins show, but the man is on fire since the arrival of Joe Flacco. He has had 4 touchdowns since Flacco arrived. Again, as long as he stays healthy, he will continue to be productive. Again, holding on both of these guys, if you have to pick and choose between two, I would say that Higgins is more the borderline sell just because he does, occasionally take a backseat there to Ja'Marr Chase. But quite frankly, with a stable quarterback in place there, these are guys that can carry you rest of season here. Moving to the chat here, we've got someone that said, T. Higgins has been carrying my fantasy team for 3 weeks. He really has. I mean, and thank goodness after the start that we got off to, it has been fantastic here. Another comment here, Bijan and Devontae Smith for Rice, Irving, and Jeanty. Interesting. I don't mind the right side of that. And the reason for that, now granted, it is risky. It is risky because, again, we don't have a timeline here on Bucky Irving. That is the only problem there. But Rashee Rice is performing at such a high level. And I don't mind, getting Ashton Jeanty there. Again, it's not a destitute situation. When I talk about guys being sell highs, it's not an absolute like, hey, get out, you have to. This is going to end up in a horrible situation. He can still be adequate there. So actually, I don't mind that side right there. Bijan obviously commands such high upside, but Devontae Smith on that end is, again, it's just, he's a more volatile asset there. We would assume, hopefully, we get A.J. Brown back after the bye week, but even then so, with Dallas Goedert in there and Saquon Barkley, you can't assume that there's going to be consistent, massive volume to Devontae Smith, even if A.J. Brown is still out after the bye there. So yeah, that taking the risk there, as long as you're okay with it, with Bucky Irving and that potential injury there lingering a little bit longer. It's frustrating that we don't have any exact timeline on there. So chat also said, what about tight end now that Tucker Kraft is out? So that is a really good one. We've got some candidates here. So if you want a short-term temporary, if you want to stream on a week-to-week basis here, a really good option this week is going to be Colston Loveland. He is not on this list, just because, hey, there's only so many people that we can talk about here. But I mean, talk about boom performances in week 9. 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards. Literally, the breakaway touchdown pass that looked truly incredible there. We have Cole Kmet, left the game with a concussion. Probably more than likely, you would think concussion probably going to be out this week. So if you have to stream this week in a good matchup, Colston Loveland has excellent upside. Long term as well, there's still guys out there like Mason Taylor on waiver wires, but you can also transition to Luke Musgrave for the Packers. That probably for a lot of people might be lower on the list there, but you got to remember that Musgrave was actually a pretty strong prospect. He was drafted actually before Tucker Kraft. I think he was a 2nd round, and Tucker Kraft was like I don't know if he was later in the 2nd or a 3rd, but in theory, it was going to be Musgrave that was going to be the tight end one there. But Tucker Kraft just ended up being far better than him. So Musgrave is a fine option. The target share for the Green Bay Packers has been aggressively tilted to tight ends at a pretty decent rate there. The targets between Tucker Kraft and Romeo Doubs are literally dead even there between the two. So they're going to have to replace that production. I would assume that Tucker Kraft will get a nice safe level of, Luke Musgrave will get a nice safe level of volume that'll make him a borderline tight end one rest of season. And then one more chat here. Would you trade Kittle if you had Gadsden on your bench? Yes. And we'll talk about that also when we talk about Sam LaPorta. Tight ends hit the market in terms of trading tight ends to see if you can upgrade at another position, because we've got a lot of people that are rostering multiple tight ends right now. So if you can capitalize on that, for sure, sell one off and get an upgrade at another position. Going on to my next sell or hold here. It is Parker Washington. We're going to tag him as trade-ish on that one. I'm cheating. It's a trade, but it's a trade-ish. Parker Washington had a fantastic game. 8 receptions, 9 targets, 90 yards. Obviously, for reference there, not a good game from Brian Thomas Jr. 3 receptions, 5 targets, 55 yards. De'Ami Brown was decently involved. He did leave the game as well with an injury. He had 3 receptions on 7 targets for 25 yards. We're not selling because we don't believe that Washington's production will continue. We are selling because we potentially have desperate fantasy managers out there that can utilize a guy like Parker Washington, and maybe you don't need him on your team. So if you're going to waivers, maybe you grabbed him already in the anticipation. If you're in a pretty competitive league or a deeper league, you might have snagged him prior to the game there with Travis Hunter going on IR there pretty early for us. If not, if you grab him and you want to flip him for somebody else, that's a really good strategy this week if you can get him. Again, when we're looking at the game here, fantastic, right? But at the end of the day, we don't have a timeline on Travis Hunter's injury. We know he's going to be out 3 games. We also had Brian Thomas Jr. leave with an ankle injury. We don't have a timeline right now on that one because it happened at the end of the game, so we don't really know in terms of how desperate that situation is going to be. And then I mentioned the injury to De'Ami Brown. So right now, Parker Washington is the wide receiver 1 in theory, if this injury lingers for Brian Thomas Jr. here. So you can float Parker Washington and perhaps get somebody to bite here because while Parker Washington is still fairly young, we haven't seen him ascend and truly garner just massive usage and operated as a high-level wide receiver 1 here. For all we know, we have some guys come off practice squad here and are more productive, or maybe the volatility in terms of his volume continues, especially with Trevor Lawrence. We noticed that they are trying to lean a little bit more on the run game. We saw the increased usage there for Bashal Tutin as well. We saw good targets to Travis Etienne. So I would suspect that we're probably going to see these running backs get more involved as well. And the Jags continue to lean on the ground game because we are continuing to see inconsistencies, unfortunately, for Trevor Lawrence there. So again, this is not a hey, okay, I got to sell him for pennies. So you can hold Parker Washington if you want to, but if you float him around, you might be able to get somebody to bite here and take a chance on him and flip him for something else. Because if you grab him and you're a strong team, and this is not necessarily something that you have to have, this can be a value for you in a sell there. Moving on to our next candidate here, it is Sam LaPorta. So trade. We're going to trade or hold on Sam LaPorta. We are going to trade Sam LaPorta. Hear me out on this one. Again, the person who commented about Kittle and Oronde Gadsden, you kind of tilted my hat there. What I am seeing in terms of start-sit questions from fantasy managers, I do a lot of start-sit shows, and a lot of questions included flexing tight ends this week, particularly Sam LaPorta. Because again, when we're looking at Sam LaPorta here, he has been fantastic, right? But if you have him, and we've been seeing these other tight ends that are doing well over the league, you might have multiples, like the person who had Kittle and Oronde Gadsden, right? So if you've got Sam LaPorta, at this point, we've got injuries all over the league. We've got Tucker Kraft going down. If you've got another option there, you can sell Sam LaPorta for a pretty penny there. Because when we're talking about Sam LaPorta, in terms of the highest price tag tight ends around the league there, Sam LaPorta is right up there, right behind Brock Bowers and Trey McBride in terms of a name that garners an extremely high amount of guys that we are a name that garners an extremely high amount of trade value there for him. So when we're talking about that, you can float him around there and potentially upgrade significantly at another position. So again, we're looking at him and the production that he has had. It's kind of boom or bust here. You know, he's either going to get you single-digit fantasy points or like 15 to 20 fantasy points. You can spot the boom games pretty easily. So it's not a big deal if you don't want to hold, or if you don't want to sell him off. You can hold on to him. Not a massive issue there, but this is really just a perfect opportunity out of this massive game to sell him to somebody else who is tight and needy. And again, particularly maybe somebody who lost Tucker Kraft there and had been relying on him as well. Let's see here. We'll move on to our second here. It is second to bottom here. It is Drake London, and we are going to hold on Drake London here. Drake London, fantastic game. Jesus, 9 receptions, 14 targets, 118 yards, 3 touchdowns here. Again, you wouldn't really think of Drake London as even being on the table as a buy or sell candidate. But oddly enough, his name popped up multiple times during start sits, shows that I did last week. I was shocked to see that people were considering sitting him compared to others. It was guys like Cortland Sutton or even Brian Thomas Jr. there. And I understand that his production has been a little bit volatile, but it's not due to his poor play. Of 7 games, he has had double-digit fantasy points in all but 2. The lack of production is not his fault. Again, when we talked about a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. and the lack of production that he's had, it has been significantly kind of featured around the fact that, unfortunately for him, he has had problems with himself, right? It's not just the fact that Trevor Lawrence is struggling. He's been a little, iffy right there. It's not as if they're not trying to get him the ball. We've seen multiple times with Brian Thomas Jr. where, unfortunately, there he is trying to push himself forward, and he's doing things like dropping passes that were very easy for him to catch, not getting both his feet down when he's catching a ball towards the sideline. So there's a lot of mental mistakes going on, and quite frankly, he just doesn't look right. If we're being completely honest there between him and the other players on his team. So when you're looking at a Drake London, he doesn't have any of those issues there. Now, every now and then we get a dud game from Michael Penix. It happens. But overall, the offense is just aggressively targeting Drake London at a really elite rate. In all but 1 game, he's had a minimum of 8 targets. In 5 of those 7 games that I talked about, he's had at least 10 targets. I mean, you cannot find that level of volume anywhere else outside of Jamar Chase, right? Just in general here. And when you look at the rest of the offense, obviously we've got Kyle Pitts and Darnell Mooney, very talented here, but Michael Penix is just locked in on London. And the offense is really built around that connection as well. It's built around Bijan Robinson and his explosive plays and volume to Drake London. He had 158 targets last season. That trend is clearly continuing here. So when you look at that, the combination of the way that Michael Penix is locked in on him, the way that he is the focal point within the offense from a pass perspective with no competition there, I mean, it's just a recipe for upside. When you look at Atlanta's strength of schedule, it is fairly neutral rest of season. They don't really have any layup matchups against the run, but their passing matchups are very serviceable here. Like maybe you face a team like Tampa Bay, more difficult against the run, but very beatable through the air there. So overall, a good situation for him to continue to push forward here. Again, London's role, usage, connection with Penix, they're not going anywhere. This level of upside is not something that you can typically find anywhere else. So he is a hold there. Or even, if you don't have him, even a buy if someone is panicking there, but definitely a hold for us. Moving on to the chat here. Drop Iomaner for Washington. Yes, I would do that for sure. And I don't know how much I trust Iomaner in general. He popped earlier in the season, right? Opposite of Calvin Ridley. But the fact that he hasn't been highly productive with Ridley out is a little bit of a red flag there. We also had the emergence there of Chimere DK as well, who brings something very different to the offense that they don't really have in either Iomaner or Calvin Ridley. So yeah, when you're looking at Washington, you're talking about somebody who can garner high upside targets compared to Iomaner, who unfortunately just offensively, I mean, the Jags have their issues, but they're far and above the Titans. So yeah, for sure. I would make that move definitely there. Chat, Ashton Jeanty equals what tier of tight end trade in PPR? The top tier. Yeah, I mean, he's an RB1. So if you were trying to trade for him, and you were offering a tight end, you are going to have to offer at least a Kittle, in my opinion, would be the bare minimum. And if you were trying to trade him away, again, that's the bare minimum of I would not go below that threshold right there. even a Jake Ferguson, who I think we talked about last week, and we're not panicking over that. Zero targets and whatnot. We're not panicking because he's been extremely involved. But even then, so dropping down to that, I think the cutoff there, right there, is Kittle for you at best. Um, Chat. Let's see. Do you hold? Oh, this was a good one. Do you hold on to Kyler Murray, or is he a straight drop at this point? We do have to hold on to him. So Arizona said that he has not lost his job. Um, I don't know. Theoretically, they have to say that, right? We've seen time before where a QB1 who is a franchise QB1, like we saw with, and this is not comparable because these are two different players in two different stages of their career, right? But we saw Bryce Young earlier in last year when he got benched and then was able to come back after Andy Dalton's injury and become the starter, and he is clearly solidified, no major issue there. So I don't really think we're in a situation where we have to be worried that Kyler is just done for the season. It is concerning because we have seen the best version of Trey McBride with Jacoby Brissett, but it's not as if the team is doing better from a winning perspective per se. So yeah, we still have to hold on to Kyler. Now, what I will say is I would not hate if you dropped Kyler and picked up a guy like JJ McCarthy. That is risky. I know it feels uncomfortable, but again, at least you're picking up somebody who offers rushing upside and is tied to a good offense with a bevy of weapons here. So if you're dropping him, you do need to be able to have something on waivers that is very easy to utilize on a consistent basis, right? And then let's move on to our last trade or hold here. It is going to be DJ Moore on that one. DJ Moore had a fantastic game. He literally did it in every single way imaginable. He was a quarterback. He was a runner, and he was a receiver. Oddly enough, the receiving part was the least thrilling of it. He had 4 receptions on 6 targets for 72 yards, touchdown pass, and a touchdown carry. On a day that Rome Odunze gave us 0 receptions on 3 targets. DJ Moore is a trade here for us, and there's a very clear and specific reason for this. This was by far the best game that he had all season, and I do not believe it is going to get close again. It's often difficult to sell these guys off of big games when they have had so much inconsistency in the past, right? But you can make the argument for DJ Moore because he has been such a solid, stable guy throughout his entire career, right? So when we're looking at DJ Moore, his name still holds value, and you can sell him high off of this performance because people drafted him at pretty decent draft capital, and they've been waiting for him to be DJ Moore. He was the wide receiver 1 of the offense last year. He's been one of the more reliable top 24-ish receivers in that 20 to 24 range in terms of fantasy points for year after year after year, no matter who was at quarterback there. So this season is just so far off of what we typically see from him. And for that reason, this is a game where you can get people back on board with feeling like this was the emergence of DJ Moore and that it's a good time to get in on him. But we're selling high here because the offense has been inconsistent with Caleb Williams and the run game has been thriving. And again, the problem is they have so many weapons here. We should not expect on a regular basis for DJ Moore to be getting touchdowns through carries and passes. And we should not expect Rome Odunze to have 0 involvement in the office here. Now, when I say trade, do not sell him for a bag of peanuts because the upcoming schedule is not actually that bad. They've got Giants, Minnesota, Pittsburgh. You can start to float him around. If you don't get anyone to bite this week, maybe you wait a week and see if you get another good performance there. But again, the problem is that we've talked about playoff schedules multiple times with different players here. The playoff schedule doesn't really help a lot here, unfortunately, for Chicago. They've got matchups against Cleveland, Green Bay, and San Francisco. Green Bay's defense, it's still a little bit in development here, but Cleveland is a tough defense. Green Bay is a moderately tough defense. San Francisco, at least they are well coached and can pull it together occasionally here. So unfortunately, this long-term doesn't pan out. So you're not going to be in a position where you feel comfortable starting him in the playoffs. So this is a good time to sell high on DJ Moore. I'm going to go to the chat here real quick. What about Travis Etienne? Hold, trade? If trade, for who? So ETN is a hold for me. And the reason for the hold there for him was one, because I don't think his name is garnering extremely high sell value right now. The market perception is kind of low on him. Everybody was very much so in on Bashal Tutin preseason, so there's still the lingering feeling that Bashal Tutin could be taking over. The snaps don't indicate that whatsoever. Tutin's usage increased, but his snaps stayed relatively the same. It's clear that ETN is a lead back, but I don't feel like perception leans that way. So unfortunately, I don't think you get the value out of him that you want. He's a very steady top 20 back, so he's a hold for me just because what you get back compared to what you can get back for an Ashton Jeanty is not on the same level. One more chat here. Do you trade Warren or Bowers, and who would you target? If you've got both of them, which is common, again, because we've talked about this because of the way that we've had these later tight ends pop, and Tucker Kraft was one of them. Ugh. But because of the way that we've had these later tight ends pop, we've got a lot of people that are doubled up here. So a Bowers Tyler Warren combination is extremely realistic. Yes, I would absolutely sell one. I am more inclined, usually I say sell the shinier object, which is obviously Brock Bowers, but I am actually more inclined to sell Tyler Warren on this one and hold on to Brock Bowers. The fact that we saw him come back to this level of capacity, and when you look at week one, which he was healthy for about half that game before he got injured, we can make a pretty clear argument here that those games that he played where he was playing through the injury, he was struggling because he was playing through the injury. And when we have seen him healthy, the upside is extremely high here. So quite frankly, the level of league winning upside that he gives you, I don't want to give that away. So if I'm trading one, it would be Tyler Warren here. I'm going to give you guys a quick recap here on everything that we talked about. We talked about Rico Dowdle as a hold here because it is not often that the guys that you are been holding or rostering on your bench or have pulled off waivers give you that league winning upside. This is a guy who absolutely is performing at a level that is legitimately going to give you league winning upside here. And he seems pretty matchup agnostic. We know he can shoot it through the moon with 200 yards on the ground in an excellent matchup. We know that he can be very stable against a solid run defense like the Packers there. So Rico Dowdle is a hold for us because this is someone who can absolutely win your league there. And then we talked about Ashton Jeanty as a sell here. I know that it hurts, I do, but the reasoning here for Ashton Jeanty, the major problem that we have here is that even though the offense did look far better with Brock Bowers back here, unfortunately, the move forward for this team is just such a bad strength of schedule here. They literally have one of the worst strength of schedules in general, just across the board here. They face Denver. They face Dallas. That is the one layup matchup that they have. Then Cleveland, Chargers, Denver, again, Philadelphia. We talked about the fact that Philadelphia is retooling and making their defense even stronger. Houston and then the Giants. Just overall, aside from the matchup against Dallas, there are really no layups here. And because Ashton Jeanty is such a high household name, if you will, there, he is one of those guys that really, when you offer in a trade value, you're going to be able to get a bag for him. So it's a sell high candidate. You're not selling him short. You're going to get a ton back for him. Take advantage of this opportunity because we're going to see more performances where he has to rely on that receiving volume for Geno because the ground game is not going to be it, unfortunately. The offensive line has not changed. Then we talked about Chase Brown and T. Higgins. We were holding both of them because on the opposite end of the Raiders there, they have an excellent strength of schedule, literally the best that you can ask for. And then you pile on that a literally perfect playoff matchup there. Again, the defense is struggling. It's not getting any better. That is the signature failure Cincinnati defense, unfortunately. It's going to force Joe Flacco to continue to pass the ball at such an aggressive rate here. So when we're looking at those two, we're going to hold on to it because the strength of schedule is fantastic and we are pushing forward with extreme volume on offense. Parker Washington, we are selling just because, again, it's something that we can maybe flip to somebody who is desperate right now. He might be operating as the wide receiver one if this ankle injury to Brian Thomas Jr. is serious in any capacity here. So there's an argument to get a decent penny out of him, out of a guy that you were literally grabbing off waivers. Hopefully you stash him beforehand so you don't have to spend any fab to get him. But if you got him and you want to capitalize on this, an excellent opportunity. And then we had Drake London as well. Drake London. Oh, sorry. Actually, we had Sam LaPorta. Sam LaPorta as well. So when we're looking at Sam LaPorta, the thing about Sam LaPorta is that this is not a negative to him whatsoever. There is no issue with Sam LaPorta. We're not panicked about him. Unlike, talking about Ashton Jeanty, there's no major strength of schedule issue here. It's just the fact that we had Tucker Kraft down. And from what I have seen in terms of start sits, we've had a ton of people that are rostering multiple tight ends right now because they have popped up so aggressively here. You might have more than one. We had someone commenting that they had a couple and they were trying to figure out who to sell there. So if you've got Sam LaPorta and you have another strong option as well, you can sell Sam LaPorta because that is an extremely, extremely high value name. We've had an overall tight end one finish for him. When he hits in bunches, right? So it's not a little mediocre performance here. When Sam LaPorta hits, he's giving you 15 to 20 fantasy points, which is cool. You don't have to panic sell. If he's your tight end one and you don't have anyone else, that's cool. Keep him. But if you've got another option that can be very serviceable for you, sell him off. Because again, he's a boom bust player. Sometimes he's getting you 5 fantasy points. Sometimes he's getting you 15 fantasy points. So he's a good sell candidate to try and upgrade at another position there. And then we had Drake London. We are holding on Drake London because he's Drake London. The target share to him is just so incredibly aggressive there. Michael Penix can be frustrating. Very true there. But the offense runs through him and Bijan Robinson at such aggressive clip there. Drake London is a hold there for the value that he brings to your fantasy roster. And then DJ Moore, we are selling off this big performance here. This was by far not even close. The best performance that we had seen from DJ Moore. The Chicago offense is spreading the ball around very well. They have a ton of pass catchers and talent. The run game has been good. Just consistency on a week to week basis there isn't really there for DJ Moore, unfortunately. So we can sell high off of this performance and just get out because unfortunately on down the line, we're going to get back to the mediocre version here. The playoff strength of schedule is not very good. And so we can sell him off. But that wraps things up, guys. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Make sure that you've got your alerts on because it is officially fantasy football season. I will be here with you every single week. We're still here. We're closing things out. We're getting in. We are almost towards the playoffs here. So this is the critical time for everybody to lock in. And I'm here to help you win your league. You can also find me across all social media platforms at It's Terra Time. Again, have a fantastic week. Make those waiver claims. Good luck with your lineups. Make those trades. And I will talk to you again all next week.